I have the privilege of serving as chair, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce the board. We have also a member, Mr. Larry Ginta, who will be joining us online. Once he logs in, we'll have 5 voting members. Either way, we have 4 voting members. And as many of you might know, certainly it is within your choice of discretion if you so choose. If you wanted to have a full board versus the minimum 4 voting member board, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But I'll just take a moment, introduce the board, take a roll call, and we'll get into our evening's business. And we'll be putting everything that is being referenced, anything that's been submitted for both anyone watching online as well as anyone in the room, right up on the screen behind me. And all of us have laptops, so rest assured that if it looks like we're not paying attention by turning around, we're looking at it right here. So to my immediate left, we have Mr. Ken Swanton, our vice chair. To his left, Mr. Stephen Delisle, our secretary. To his left, Mr. Walter Buchanan, ZBA member. And Mr. Larry Ginta, also a member once he logs in. We'll just introduce him. But for now, again, my name is Rob Ciampetti. So we have 4 voting members, which makes us a minimum but quorum board. Going to our agenda, everything's online, of course. All supporting materials that we have will be published online or can be followed along. And anyone, if we have anyone listening who still is logging on remotely, they can follow along with materials as well. We're going to follow our public hearings in the sequence that we have them on our agenda. So with that, we will open our public hearings. I know that many of you in this room, as I look around, I know that you are regulars or certainly repeat offenders here at the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals, so I will spare you the indignity of having to listen to the lay of the land. But essentially, we will listen to, I'll give you the abridged version. We will hear from the applicant once I read the legal notice. We will then go to public comment, and public comment is either one may stand or give their name for Ms. Gretchen Joy to my far right. Of course, Caitlin Sullivan, our city planner, is to my close right. So that Ms. Joy can record your information. We ask that you just kindly give your name and address. You needn't say you're pro or con, for or against, though you may. You can simply just raise your hand, be recognized, and let us know what you're thinking. We ask that you kindly keep it within 2 minutes. We have wide discretion and often grant great discretion and courtesy to allow folks to finish their thoughts. Once we go through public comment, we then close that and go into questions from the board. After board members ask questions of the applicant's representatives, adapt perhaps public comment questions. We then close that and go into deliberations. Deliberations are when we just essentially toil with and discuss out loud the legal criteria for whatever the applicant is seeking from this board in the way of zoning relief, whether it's a variance, a special permit for nonconformities. You'll hear the members of the board, myself included, just sort of restate what the legal criteria is and then discuss out loud as part of the public meeting law, the open meeting law, discuss out loud whether we feel the applicant and their application has met that burden or falls short, or some additional questions. Once we have gone through deliberations, we will close that and go to a motion and a second. And in the spirit of Robert's Rules of Order, the motion and the vote is placed before the ZBA to vote upon in the form of a motion to approve. You may have heard this before, but just because you hear a member advance the application in the form of making a motion to approve does not mean that that member plans to support it or vote in favor of the application. It's simply the procedural method by which the question is placed to us for a vote. So it is placed in the affirmative in the form of a motion to approve that is then seconded. And then once the motion to approve is made and seconded, I then call the roll. And in order for an application to be successful, it must be met with at least 4 votes in the affirmative. 4 yes votes means that it passes and is approved. And once we have Mr. Ginta join us, oh, he is here. Excellent. So, Larry, are you with us as well? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yep. And I'm trying to make my camera come on too. So can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you. And so Mr. Larry Ginta is our also a voting board member and will be our 5th voting member this evening. So in order for an application to be successful, it must be met with at least 4 votes in the affirmative of the 5 voting members. So without further ado, we'll go into and open our public hearing, and we will begin with the application by Mr. John T. Sarkis, 90 Federal Street. This is a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary permits and approvals to expand an existing two-family dwelling, resulting in the construction of more than 500 square feet on a non-conforming lot and a rear yard setback lateral extension. Mr. Sarkis, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John T. Sarkis. With me tonight, I have Anita Mayo, who's the architect for the project. For the record, I am a resident of Street, as a matter of fact, but not this property. Thank you for having us tonight. Caitlin, you can go right to it. Okay. You summed it up well. Thank you. An application for special permit for non-conformities to expand a structure, non-conforming structure by more than 500 square feet. Here we have a large view of the general area. You may know the subject lot coming down Federal Street, downhill Federal Street. It is the second lot on the left, just after the famous symbol that we see parked in the yard there on occasion. Go on to the next one. Here's a little closer version of it. See, the house is mostly to the right of the on the subject lot. It is very much right on the street frontage. There's a sidewalk right there. It's the structure's front steps go right to the lot line. So you step off the sidewalk right onto a front step. You can go on. Okay, a little bit of the history of the property, and its condition. It is a two-story revival. It has really fallen into disrepair over the years. A good portion of the siding, the trim, the roofing, the windows are failing in many cases. The masonry, those front steps that I talked about are failing at this time. We were not able to find a district data sheet on this particular site. We believe it was built around 1845, looking at all various maps to get a sense of when it popped up. It is presently owned by Jeffrey Woodburn, who's had it since 1994. It was deeded to him by Jacob Checkaway. The property has been in the Checkaway family prior to 1933. You may know the Checkaway family from the oil delivery business and also the salvage business going way back. That was here in town, both businesses. There have been some alterations to the footprint of the existing structure. Namely, we believe there was an addition in the back, which would be sort of, let's call it, the first addition to the rear of the structure, and then a second one, which is a sort of a mudroom or sunroom type thing. We believe the first addition is more than 75 years old, but the second addition is less than 75 years old. The property was converted to a two-family in the 1970s, and we believe that the second addition occurred at the same time of that conversion. There we go. There was once a little note that, if you may have noticed on the plot plan, there was a dog leg off to the rear right of the site. At one point, we are told that there was a carriage house or a carriage barn in that location, and it had a second floor to it. And supposedly the gentleman who owned it at the time, back in the 1850s, was constantly getting beat by bowling by people at the Dolphin House. It was ridiculed, so he took it upon himself to install a new bowling above the carriage carriage house. And practiced. And went back to the Dalton house and made bets with everybody and came out with it. Barn is no longer, don't know when it was demolished, but it was basically built right at the lot line in a very unusual shape. The existing structural components of the building, namely the foundation and the frame, remain in good condition for the most part. There was a fire up in the attic at one point that did very minimal damage, thankfully. The roof timbers are not the best, but they're, adequate for today. As part of our renovation, we'll likely have to fortify portions of the roof, portions of the floor system, both first and second. But we don't believe there'll be much in the way of fortifications necessary to the foundation. It looks very solid. As I said earlier, the siding, windows, and roofing all in need of significant repair. And that's part of our plan here. We also know that the windows are not original. Most of the windows, I think there's a couple of original windows up on the third floor of the attic. You can go on to the next. It's 1894 Sanborn map. You can move on closer if that's okay.
Sure.
The 1894 Sanborn map, can you go back one? So the property is that you see the property on Federal Street there. It appears to have been part of a larger parcel at one time. The first would have been the first property on Federal Street at that point. You can see immediately downhill, so to the right of the structure, there is a two-family building that was there at that time as well. You can go on again to 06. Okay. This is not much changed from 94 to 06. You can see it's still part of the original first lot. You can go one more now. Didn't click over to. This is a 1924 assessor's map, and tracing the difference in the footprint between 06 and 24, we see additions or alterations to the rear of the structure. We can't pin them down. They don't even match what's there today. But we do see that there were some changes that are occurring at that time. And I believe at this point, the lot was separated from the first lot on Federal Street. Here is a look at all four elevations of the existing revival today. Upper left is the left side of the house when facing it. To the right is the front, and of course the other side in rear right now. You can see the rear inferior addition. The mudroom is the one-story addition that you see there right now. By virtue of the fact that we see some flat roofs on the structure, we believe those were later date not part of the original structure. That as well as trim details were altered or very from the bulk of the front. So looking at the upper left, the front box of that we believe was original, and the back you see there in the back section we believe was added somewhere around 1920, 1924 maybe. You can go on. It's a view of the property from across the street. The area where we propose the addition is cleared, but does have some shrubs along the frontage right now, blocking that view into that section as well as some fencing. Go on. Close up of it. Show how it is right off the sidewalk. Another notable feature of this photo is the roof of the portico, the entry portico connecting to the bay, just to its left. We don't believe that's original. Part of our project would be to separate those two roofs and return them to what we believe they probably look like originally. You can also see some of the repairs on that photo. The eaves have been altered in an attempt to repair the structure. We will bring everything back to as near its original condition as is possible. We will document all of the trim, measure and document all of it. And those would be the same details that we would use to restore the property. You can go on. Again, view across the street, you see a driveway to the right of the subject property, leading all the way back to where the carriage barn would have been. Go on. This is that same side of the structure. And now the rear is standing where the carriage barn would have been, looking at the rear of the property. Evidence of things that need to get taken care of. The structure you look, or the section you're looking at is the mudroom that was attached at one point, and we see that the footing holding it up is set in a 5-gallon bucket with concrete in it. You can go on. View that same section, right? See the spiral staircase there? Was added in the 70s as part of the conversion to a 2-family. You can go on. And I think you can probably go on again. And again. This photo shows trim and details, architectural details that indicate that the back section was probably an addition at one point.
One other important feature shown, I'm sorry, the chimney that you see at the very rear of the upper, the one that barely projects above the ridge line, you can see that it's inboard of the facade, so it doesn't express itself on the outside of the building. And as it currently exists, it was taller at one point in time. We saw through. So it's been reduced in height, and it no longer functions in any capacity, either as a fireplace or as a heating system. So our plan is to remove the fireplace and maintain the taller chimney in the back and restore.
Thank you. Yet there is again another anecdote of that chimney. It was hit by lightning supposedly and fell. Portions of it fell. And what ensued after that, I can't repeat it in public before. Quoting the owner. Okay, you can go to the next slide. These are some neighborhood context photos. On the left, we're looking down Federal Street, downhill Federal Street, standing at about the subject property. And the slide to the right of that is a little further down. I walked down Federal Street and took that shot. You can go on. So this is a photo looking at from the intersection of High Street and Federal Street at the sidewalk, more or less on the opposite side of the street. Looking again downhill Federal Street, you can see the sailboat. And just behind that, obscured by some trees, is the subject property. This is a view looking to the rear. I'm standing at the deck that's off the mudroom here, looking at the neighbors behind the subject property. I believe both of these shots are depicting 2 or 3 family. I believe they're both 2 family structures abiding us. In the back. At least one of them is, and there are, I know, 3 2 family structures abiding the subject. You can go on. Okay, now, the photo to the left, on the left is the, looking to the left, up towards High Street in the backyard. You can see the sailboat in that picture again. And then, the other photo is, looking up towards High Street from, down the subject property. So you can see the subject property in light blue, on the far right. Here is a site plan showing what we would like to do for an addition. The main house, the existing house is shown in the dashed line, the white portion, if you will. We propose to demolish the inferior third, second addition, that mudroom addition only. There's no real way to say that. We propose to leave the existing driveway where it is. We're proposing to add to the left of the structure, set substantially back from the road. Don't remember the exact amount of square footage we're at, but it shows later on in the photo in one of the slides. And initially, this is a revised site plan. We had submitted with our application a site plan showing parking on the left side. It's where the driveway, you see the driveway now running to the left. We had a space for 2 cars parking in that area. It's Caitlin. Concerned citizen raised a point that it might be better to put them to the back, and we had honestly thought about that up front and went back and forth to figure out what was the right idea. We reconsidered and then thought this makes more sense. It'd be a game plan. So we made that revision, and I did submit a revised site plan to the board. It's uploaded to the board. You can go on. Okay, here's the zoning. This is the revised version. After it sent me made a change to the site plan, you can see here that proposed 2-family structure. The only non-conformity that we know of would be the lot size, the existing lot size. But otherwise, we comply with all setbacks and of course parking.
There is we are currently showing a bulkhead in the rear of the property that we are asking for setback relief from. And there is a small deck off of the backside of the addition, which also we're asking for setback relief from. But the building itself is entirely in conformance with the requirements.
When we get to the architecturals, I can further expand upon that. Okay. Here's a quick synopsis of the existing structure and what we plan to do. So, as I said, we expect to completely strip the project, the property of its site, which is asbestos shakes that are clearly not original. We'd like to repair, replace all trim in the exact same dimension as is there today. So that means all window casings, window headers, columns, frieze boards, soffits, returns, lintels, everything. Pediments. We have proposed to replace the slate roof with a typical asphalt shingle roof. Shingles that would imitate the slate that we have today. We would like to replace all windows with simulated divided light windows. Pattern to match what was original. We have a photo of the house. Can't quite date the photo, but we see that the windows in the photo were all the double hungs were mostly 6/6. And today they're nothing. They're 0/1/1. So we can tell that they weren't, that what's there is not original, and we'd like to go back to the original look of the house. We intend to refurbish the existing front door. It looks to be in sound condition. It needs to be taken out, sanded up well, stained and coated. We'll do the same thing to the masonry steps. Like to bring them back to what they probably were in their original condition. As I described, we're going to reconfigure that portico roof to bring that back to what we believe was its original condition. We propose to remove the one damaged chimney that is in an unsafe condition right now. We will demolish and remove the inferior addition at the rear. And on the side, I forgot to mention, there's also another, we'll call it a bathroom addition that we believe was done in the 70s as part of the conversion to two-family as well. That's in the way of the addition that we would be making. So the total square footage of what we would be removing is just 97 square feet of the building, all of which is not original to the building. And of course, the spiral stair has to go. As far as the addition goes, it has very minimal impact to the existing structure. It ties in at the rear of the existing structure for a short period and barely overlays the roof. It clips the corner. We thought that was important. Setting it back, we went through iterations where we made a T out of the property, putting an addition sort of in the center of it longitudinally and then coming off to the left. And that resulted in covering up the existing bay that you see on the left side of the property. And it also would have brought it closer to the street. So at the end of the day, we felt that setting the structure back like that kept the entire left side of the existing property in view from just about anywhere that you can see it right now. It is the addition that we have proposed is essentially the same height as the existing building at its highest point. Similar massing, similar roof lines. The significant lines of the existing structure have been sort of matched with the new project, with the new property or the new addition, the new areas. It very much respects the very clear look of a Greek revival. And here you can see the total amount of space that we propose to have is 2,109, which is on 2 floors. You can go to the next one. I'm going to have Bernie take it from here, if that's okay. This describes the areas that are subject to demolition in our proposal. And it's also worth noting we have been through historical commission already and they have released the demo delay on the plans that you see here today.
Thank you, Judge. I'll go through quickly. On the left side, you see the mudroom in the back and the deck that's existing. They're actually structurally the same framing. So we're removing that entirely. Those are later additions in any case and in poor condition. The structure with the spiral stair, as John mentioned, was added, I think, in the 1970s. And obviously the spiral stair is not original to the building. That would be removed. All windows would be removed, and that's what's shown shaded here. Next slide, please. Here you can see on the right side of the building, that's the elevation. It's on the left side of the page. You can see the windows that we're removing. Most will be replaced except one in the back there. And then the drawing on the right side of the page is showing you the very rear of the property where we're removing the mudroom and the deck, and on the far right side, the small bathroom addition with the spiral stair. Next slide, please. These are the calculations for removal. We comply with the percentage of demolition that we're permitted to demolish underneath the threshold. And this is just the evidence of that. Next slide, please. The proposed Federal Street elevation, and although it appears to be in plane, the addition that's on the left side is actually set with its facade back as far as the bay window on the left side of the existing building. So it's set significantly far back from the street, and then the connector piece in the middle is set back another 20 feet or so beyond that. So the addition is subservient to the existing building, and you can see, as John mentioned, the portions, the slopes, the massing, the tribute are picking up their cue from the existing building. We differentiated the old and the new buildings in the foundation. We're going to use a veneer brick base of the addition to distinguish it slightly. There's also a side porch in addition that does not occur in the original building, but we think gives it a historic character that is in keeping with buildings in the neighborhood.
Caitlin, could I ask you to run your mouse pointer over the ridge of the addition area? Yeah, that's the front gable, a gable facing forward, and then the ridge that runs left to right.
Just the line, that's the
Right.
that line there.
So in this photo, it can be deceiving to someone who's not familiar with, or this slides, can be deceiving to someone who's not familiar with prints. If you look, the highest line you see there is not the ridge, that's a dimensional line. And it just, the way it carried through into the slide doesn't come up very clear. The ridge property is not that tall, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the ridge line from the addition is actually about 6 inches lower than the existing ridge line. So the addition is slightly lower. Next slide. So this is a view of the rear of the property. The left side is the existing building and the right side is the addition in the back. You can see the roof that John is referring to and how it resolves into fairly regular geometry in the back. There's a small connecting roof in between the old and the new, where we do overlay the existing roof in the back by about 18 square feet. And up at the high roof, we overlay by an additional 5 square feet. So we have 23 square feet of existing roof that is being overlaid with new roof. Next slide, please. This is a view of the driveway of the existing building with our addition in the very background in the back. You can see the ridge compared to the existing ridge at the height. Next slide, please. So here are the floor plans, and I think one thing to point out is our addition is on the left side. We have a big window on the living room side, and the facade of our addition, as I mentioned, is aligned with the front face of the bay window of the existing building. Because we're set back so far from the sidewalk area, most of the existing facade of the existing building on the left side will remain able to be viewed from the sidewalk. So most of the existing facade is open to view. Most of the facade that's viewable now will be viewable once the addition is built. The small porch that I mentioned is in the middle and the back. Above, there's a dining table shown. It's that small addition there, and the other projection to the left of that is the bulkhead that we're talking about. There is designation of the required setback lines that you can see on the drawings. The building itself, the addition itself, is within the required setback. The existing building projects way beyond the required setback lines in a number of places, pre-existing non-conforming. The only new proposed areas that we're proposing to encroach beyond the setback line are those two elements in the back. Obviously, we can put bulkhead in the notch between the new addition and the bay window. That's there. We would rather put bulkhead in the back of the building where it belongs rather than put it along the street elevation. That's the trade-off for relief or having the bulkhead in the back.
May I? It's not clear to me that the bulkhead is subject to the setback. And I couldn't quite find that to be plain as day, let's say, in the ordinance. And it was similarly, as I read the ordinance, that deck was not subject to the rear yard setback because it doesn't have a roof over it. Now, in most communities I deal in, decks are subject to setbacks. But I didn't read our regs that way. Nonetheless, the zoning determination said that we needed a lateral extension in the rear yard, so we applied for it. If that is a problem, if that is an issue, I believe that rear deck could be converted to a patio, in which case it would not be subject to a setback. I think it's so close to grade that it's only a step or two.
Okay.
But we prefer the deck for obvious reasons.
Very good. Was there anything further? Or I do want to interrupt you still.
We can move beyond. We have enough information.
Well, I'll tell you what, we want to be sensitive to time and I want to be respectful, of course. I'll give you a few minutes to just wrap things up and then we're going to move on.
That's fine. I did want to point out the 3D views because I think they really show the massing better than the two-dimensional views. Here's a 3D view from that shows the addition and how far back it is set from the street. As I mentioned, the front facade is in plane with the front bay there, and so it's fairly well set back. And the highest point of the addition roof is definitely back. Won't be very prominent when you come to the street. Next slide, please. This is rear view from the existing dock leg in the back. Shows the mudroom removed. Shows a new deck added back there, set back further than the current deck. And our addition is to the right in the rear. And the small deck and the bulkhead can be seen on the right side. Next slide, please. This is if you're standing at the boat and you're looking towards our property, this is what you would see. And as I said, most of the facade, the left side of the existing building would be visible even after the addition is constructed. Next slide, please. And this is more of an aerial view to give you an idea of how far back. You can see the overlap of the tall roof, the addition intersecting with the tall roof that existing. All of those roofs would be new materials, as mentioned, and there's approximately 5 square feet of roof that would be overlapped in the proposed conditioning on the high roof. That's a good overview.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional walk through the renderings. Thank you. Anything further before we? So we may have questions, so don't go far. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation, gentlemen. We'll close that portion of the public hearing and go to public comment. Anyone in the audience who may wish to be heard? Yes, ma'am. And if you don't mind, could I impose upon you to come up to just the microphone so this way we can, we're recording the session and we have a few folks online, so I just want to make sure they can hear. Thank you very much.
Hi, Pam Kipp, 11 Tremont Street, so I'm in a butter. And single family house. And I'm excited for what you're doing. I think it'll be beautiful. A question and problem. We've lived in our house now for almost 36 years. And during that time, we've had additions next to us that have these long driveways. So on one hand, I'm very excited about driveway going in the back, not being on the front because that isn't in the character street. But it's a lot more pavement and we had it happen next to it. We had it at 13 Tremont, 15 Tremont Street. So you're making a lot more roofs that dump rain that then comes down. And we've had, our basements flooded because at the end of Tremont Street, the drain will get blocked up or not when it's raining really hard. So if you could require permeable surface for the driveway material, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that may wish to be heard before we go to anyone online?
Hi, Jay Igerman, 83 High Street. I'm not on the address caught my eye on a notice a few weeks ago. And I contacted Everett Chandler, the civil engineer, who then contacted the owner about the parking in front. And just very simply, it's a small detail, normally, this board concentrates on the architecture. The drawings seem fine to me, what that's worth. But I really think it would be detrimental to the neighborhood. And so I'm grateful that they heeded that and they went back and moved it out of the front yard. I'm surprised to see them allowed. As far as the drainage, I didn't look at that. As I said, not on a letter. That's a detail. I guess I just wanted to close by saying, the details are very. So, your job makes all the difference because once this thing is built, including the driveways, it's there for the rest of our lives. So it's worth taking the time to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agnew. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rita Mahalan, 53 Warren Street. I'm a former board member of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the co-presidents, Tom Colterjohn and Linda Miller, who could be here. The purpose of the preservation is the protection and enhancement of the historic structures, sites, district, and streetscapes to promote economic, cultural, educational, and the general welfare of the public. And the EPA is one of the ways in which this asset is carefully considered when granting variances in historic neighborhoods. Parking lots have a potential adverse effect on the character of the historic property or the neighborhood. The previously proposed parking in the front of the structure at 90 Federal Street isn't appropriate on many levels. So I'm here tonight and glad to have heard that they've made a design change to put the parking in the rear of the structure. and therefore the trust would agree with that. And very happy that you would condition your variance on that coming to fruition. And thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for your remarks. Anyone else in the audience wish to be heard? Seeing no further hands, going once, going twice, we'll move quickly to our online community and see if there's any hands raised. Anyone online who wishes to be heard, just kindly raise your hand at the bottom of your screen. Use that hand raise icon and we'll recognize you by name or telephone. Seeing no hands, Caitlin, do you see any?
No.
Great. Then one last pass in the room. Anyone wish to be heard before we close? Seeing no further hands, I will close public comment and we will go to questions from the board. And in no particular order, anyone who may have a question, feel free to jump right on in. Larry, you can still hear us online as well?
Yes, yes, sir.
Any questions from you?
Want to start?
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
I just had a couple. How big is the existing structure?
In total, about, so the existing structure has, 2,895 square feet. We're demolishing 97 feet, and we're adding 2,109 square feet. So the final total will be 4,935.
So the new structure is 2109 and the old structure after the demolition is 2800, so.
Slightly under 27.
I noticed the lot coverage was right at the 25%. Open space was 44, that was good. You did move the parking. Okay, I'm just going over my notes, I'm sorry. That's it, they answered the rest of my questions. No other questions, thank you.
It's one.
Yeah, I'll go. Could you go to the page that shows the zoning matrix? Well, I'm trying to understand very clearly this rear setback thing that you brought up a couple times. This chart says the rear setback is supposed to be 25 feet. Today, before you demolish anything, it's 18.2. When you get done, it's 20.5. Right, so I'm reading that correctly. So just looking at that page, it would appear to me we're not creating a new nonconformity. It already is nonconforming, and it'll just be a little less nonconforming when you're done. And that's what that page tells me, unless I'm missing something. So if you could go to the site plan for a second. So that 20.8, I think.
20.5.
20.5. You just had to zoom in on that back so we can find that 20.5.
It's pointing to the back rear corner of the.
Right there.
It's not going.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
the 20.5.
It's pointing to the deck.
Pointing to the deck, the other one's 26. Building's 26.
That's right. The building is set back at 26 feet
Right, but there's another 23.7 over here. On the right hand side.
to the building probably.
I see the 18.2, which is going to the old deck. So that's.
Yep.
The old deck to be removed. So the 23.7, that's going to the new deck.
The 23.7 is pointing to the existing mudroom right now.
Existing mudroom. Okay.
That goes away too, right?
That does.
So the new rear setback is 20.5 to the deck.
20.5 to a deck. It used to be 18, it used to be 18.2 to a deck. So it's less non-conforming.
That's not,
Unless I'm missing something. Correct. Do we always count decks? I mean, isn't there a rule on the size of the deck? Caitlin, do you happen to? Anybody have-
Usually it's counted towards the 30% of the length of the wall. Then we count it, and at a certain height, we count it towards the setback.
I see. Okay, and since these have all been through Jennifer Blanchet, I assume that's all been looked at. So I just want to understand what numbers you're looking at. So I don't see us as having to give relief here. You're taking a pre-existing building and it's becoming a little less non-conforming as you remove it from something and add something.
That was how I viewed it too. Jennifer's For zoning determination.
Yeah, I see it.
Here's the deck and the bulkhead, so they're actually beyond the.
Yeah, no, it's pretty clear. Well, thank you. Okay, my next question has to do with, I think, one of the comments we heard from the audience was from, someone in the neighborhood who was concerned about drainage. I don't know if I saw where this says gravel driveway on the right. What is the proposed bituminous concrete driveway? Is that a permeable or impermeable surface?
Typically, bituminous concrete is impermeable.
That's impermeable?
Yeah.
So would that affect the drainage? I mean, you're having some big roofs there. Would that? Where would it go?
Where it goes now, really, it's a lot sloping downhill.
Toward which way? Towards
Towards.
Battle Street? Oh, downhill towards what? Yeah. Okay.
The entire lot sheet's pretty much that way, right? We could make an attempt to add dry wells.
Well, I guess my question is, I mean, sometimes when we see these plans, people use a permeable surface for their driveway
Sure.
to reduce the concern of, I think, we heard it from a couple of the people in the hearing. I don't know, maybe one of my colleagues can pick this up. I'm not as much of an expert in this. That is a solution I've seen in the past. Is that something you'd be amenable to?
We would consider that.
I have another question, which is, and I only live a block away, so I walk by this, I live right on Tremont Street. In a house that was built in just about the same period, with just about the same triangular looks and all. I noticed this house, has a lot of, you mentioned the trim, you're gonna measure it very carefully and replace it. Those boards were cut when the trees were big. I mean, there's a very, I'm sure you know, they're very wide boards. Particularly the big corner boards. Are you planning on trying to repair those, or are those, I don't know how you replace them? It's hard to get boards that wide these days. You know what I mean?
Those boards are actually built up. It's not one big wide board on the corner. We would be able to reconstruct that to look the way it looks right now with pieces. However, your point is well taken on across the gable. So those sections there, we would buy sheets of a sheet stock of AZAC of composite material. Which comes in 4x8. And we would literally fuse them together.
I was just wondering if that was all I got. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Mr. Blatt?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Champetti. I'd like to pick up on the drainage issue again, because it seems to me that the old driveway existing is gravel, but it's going to become blacktop. Right. And then you've got the existing roof, plus the new roof, plus another very, long depth of the yard field of blacktop again. So you really are losing an awful lot of drainage. And if you're going, saying it's gonna sheet off towards Water Street, that's into your, really, the neighbor's house is pretty close to, if you walk down there, I'm sure you have because you're. Yeah. So I think, you don't have to go to the planning board on this. So I think we have to say something about the drainage. I think that there probably are some efforts that should be made here, that should be shown on this plan to mitigate any sort, not any runoff, but to just try to reduce it as much as can be, reasonably expected. Yeah, that's
It's a reasonable request. Absolutely.
So I don't know how we want to do that if we're to approve a plan without, tonight with no reference to drainage, if we want to.
Well, if you're talking, when you speak of drainage, we talking about the permeability of the cover of the driveway, or are we talking about correction?
Right, I mean, I'm not an engineer.
Right.
Here, I don't know how you, I'm just saying, I think that ultimately you need to deal with it, but I don't know how one deals with it.
Right now, I mean, that's a good point, and perhaps it just warrants a bit of clarification. So, Mr. Sarkis, with respect to the intended stormwater collection management and dissipation, I'm assuming that the plan is calling for dry well use, or
I believe we would have to comply. In many towns now, we have, I haven't looked at, seen, new reports yet, but in most towns, they now have stormwater management, and it affects every single lot.
so I think the points, well taken. We heard at least from one abutter, but perhaps others have this comment and concern that haven't just articulated it, but the roofs create additional impervious surface and runoff. The driveway cover is significant. And from what I'm hearing, there's at least some amenability on your part to make that some form of surface. If the board were inclined to consider granting the relief sought with conditions, it would be required that the applicant submit compliant design on what the cover. I mean, there's not many choices.
Or some sort of dry well. There's probably some math that needs to be
It
done.
would likely be both.
That's,
Yeah.
there's a,
Honestly, it would likely be, pervious pavers, pervious, bituminous,
right.
and a dry well or two.
The board could consider, moving forward without that detail in place by making reference to detail being submitted. I mean, the board as a whole could consider the application with a condition, even though we didn't have a hydrotechnical design. It would have to comply with the stormwater management standards that the city has, that most cities have. So we know it's going to have to be compliant. With respect to the cover, we would probably need you to tell us what you're thinking in terms of pervious cover, crushed bluestone versus some, hybrid version of, I don't know, whatever it is you're thinking. I'm not suggesting that's it.
It might be a mix of all of those.
Okay.
Where we use, a brick towards the front where it's visible to the street and transition to an impervious
The sidewalk's brick now, correct?
sidewalk is all brick.
So the apron would, so when you say brick, are you talking about transitioning from brick to like a granite or Belgian block,
Something like that
then
first,
to some other?
where you can have recharging between the.
Okay. I don't know if that answers Mr. Delisle the question, but I mean, I think we've teased out as much detail as I think we'd be able to have to consider tonight. If we were inclined, we would have probably this, we could make it conditioned, and then it would have to be submitted to the planning office before, before, it would have to be submitted before they could commence. We've done it. It certainly plays into sort of the administrative economy of not sending them back, to have to come back. Just in the interest of everyone, time, effort, our docket, et cetera. So that's available to us if we as a board want to consider that, we can certainly do it. And it sounds like the applicant's willing. Am I correct? I don't mean to. Okay, was there any further questions?
I think that, Mr. Swanton hit my.
Yeah. Mr. Gintick, did you have any questions before we?
I just had one question. I had heard that Historic had said that they could remove the slate roof. And I was just questioning on the removal of the slate roof from a historic home. Is it in such disrepair that it couldn't be repaired?
Yes, we actually looked into it. Our preference was to keep it. However, the leaks are so numerous that we believe that that water has enters below the shingles and spreads out, and it has hit numbers and numbers and numbers of the fasteners of the shingles themselves. And even though they're sitting in place today, fasteners have become significantly compromised and will continue to rust. And will ultimately fail and more shingles will fly off. So there's no way of really repairing this roof to right now to guarantee that we won't have leaks other than to strip it entirely. And I do not want to put I don't want to put money into renovating the inside of the building until I know I've got a non-leaky roof. It just is, unfortunately, these days are gone. Those days are gone. It's the economics of slate are prohibitive, rather prohibitive.
Okay.
I understand.
Larry, anything further?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we will close questions from the board and move into deliberations. And again, we're deliberating the criteria for a special permit for nonconformities. So I seem to always lean on you, Ken. Do you want to?
Sure, I'll be happy to.
You're just my closest left.
Yes. Well, there are two criteria. First, are there any new nonconformities created? And there are none. The second criteria is what you're doing substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than its current pre-existing non-conforming state. It is a big expansion. If it was on a smaller lot didn't have a gigantic side yard, it would be a very big addition. Going from 2,800 to adding another 21. And that would kind of raise a overly massive flag. But the size of the lot is so big, and you have set it back from the street, although some people might argue that they should all be along the street. Having said that, massing seems less by being set back. And I also think you've done a nice job of trying to also make it look like it somehow was there in the 1840s with the rest of it. So I think it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what's there. And I can support this application.
Very good. Mr. Lund?
Yeah, I concur with Mr. Swanton's analysis. I think for me, the only thing that is, that sticks out to me is just the water issue that we discussed. Otherwise, I can support this.
Thank you. Mr. Chen?
Yeah, I agree. My first concern when I looked at this was massing. But it is a long skinny house, if you will, looking at it from this, although it is a large addition. It will be seen as one big fat house from federal, and I don't think the massing is that big of an issue, not now that I've seen the drawings. So with that, I can support the application.
Very good. Mr. Ginta?
I support the application, as long as the driveways are addressed as spoken about in the meeting.
I'd say I agree, and I think that it's thoughtful planning and certainly appropriate design aesthetic to de-emphasize displaying our cars as part of our built environment. Though we've become very accustomed to doing that in the last 100 years. I think that it is a thoughtful and historically appropriate movement, especially in sensitive areas, closed-in areas, that we display and highlight and showcase the architectural heritage of our, of our inventory to the extent to which it survives or is restored and preserved. So I always think that pushing parking in cars to the back is absolutely a priority whenever possible. So I applaud you for taking that extra time to do that. And I think that when my colleagues may embed as part of a motion to approve the condition of permeability on the cover, which addresses my other concern. And if that's the case, I also support it. So thank you for the presentation. Any further deliberations before we close? Do we have a motion to approve and a second? And any conditions?
I'll make the motion to approve. There are two conditions in the staff report here that I assume you guys have heard about about the sidewalk and the tree. So the motion I'm making is to approve the special permit for nonconformities for 90 Federal Street with the special conditions noted, I should say the two special conditions noted in the staff report, plus an additional special condition regarding drainage. So now let me address those three conditions. The first, I'll just read it just for the record. The applicant shall replace the existing sidewalk in front of the entire property frontage in accordance with specifications provided by the Department of Public Service. Said improvements shall be completed prior to the grant of the new occupancy permits. In extenuating circumstances, including but not limited to seasonal constraints, an alternative deadline for compliance herewith may be submitted to and approved at the sole discretion of the zoning administrator. So that's the one about sidewalks. Then you got one about trees. The applicant shall remove the existing tree on the corner of the existing driveway and install a new street tree. Should the tree warden call for the replacement after an evaluation, if the new street tree is required, the new tree shall be in accordance with specifications provided by the Department of Public Services. Said improvements shall be completed prior to the grant of new occupancy permits in extenuating circumstances. She can change it if she wants to. As I said. The third condition is one we developed here tonight, and I'll start, but perhaps my colleagues would like to offer a friendly amendment. So the third condition has to do with drainage. We would like the two driveways to be a permeable surface. And we would like there to be, we call them, what's that? A dry well consistent, and these, a dry well, and these should be consistent with somebody's regulations. You mentioned it.
Yeah, the performance standards.
It's a performance standards.
By city and or state performance standards for stormwater collection.
Exactly. That's
Maintenance.
Gretchen, did you get that? Anyways, so,
That's easier.
before we second and vote on, did that reflect pretty, okay. All right, that's my motion.
Our hardy keeper of the record, Gretchen, did you have all that? Okay, great. So then, Gretchen's the boss. She's writing it all down. All right, great. We have a motion made, and did we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. So motion's made by Mr. Swanton with three specified conditions that are now on the record, seconded by Mr. Delisle. Calling the roll, Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Ginton.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it with those conditions, and the application is approved. Good luck to you, and thank you for your time, and any members of our audience and community that took the time to wait and speak. Thank you for your time and your input as well. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, moving to our next application. This is the application of Windward Shaw LLC, care of Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC. The application is 59 Water Street. The applicant seeks all necessary permits and permissions and approvals for two individual requests for relief, a special permit, the demolition of less than 25% of the exterior walls within the Demolition Control Overlay District, or DCOD. And secondly, the applicant seeks a special permit for nonconformities for an extension of a nonconforming setback at the primary of the primary and accessory structure. Is that correct? And okay. Attorney Mead, good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street, Newburyport. With me here this evening is my colleague, Ben Roberts, and the architect on the project, Scott Brown, and the principal of Windward Shaw, George Hazelton. As the chair suggested, we're here for 59 Federal Street. We're proposing to, you can go to the next slide. Proposing to renovate the existing structure and remove the existing garage, accessory garage, and rebuild it. The proposal is for a special permit for non-conformities as well as a DCOD special permit. We have been in front of the Historic Commission, and you have that report. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I do want to point out, just for upfront, purposes, because the number's kind of scary at first, according to the DCOD, that we are triggering the DCOD because we're proposing to remove 47.34% of the exterior walls. However, 27.2% of that are these one-story additions that are being removed. And a little bit relates to some reconfiguration of the windows. So I just wanted to point that out. Next slide. So the property itself is listed as contributory on the district data sheets. It was constructed around 1890 according to the district data sheets, and 1865 according to the assessor's records. There is no Form B for the structure. The 1890 date appears to be more accurate, given that the structure does not appear on the 1888 Sanborn maps, but does appear on the 1894 Sanborn maps. But we did provide the Sanborn maps to you in our filing. You will also see that over the years, there's been an accessory structure in the rear of the property, in the rear of the house, but it's been in various locations. And the garage that's there now is certainly more recently built than the other structures that have existed over time. Next slide, please. So the property is non-conforming for lot area. It is 5,344 square feet, where 10,000 feet are required. Lot frontage, 55 feet, where 90 feet are required. Lot coverage at 33%, where at 28.6%, where 25% is the maximum. Open space is compliant. Front yard setback is at 5.1 feet, where 25 feet is required. And then side yard B is at 1.1 feet, 1 feet, and 10 feet are required. The rear yard setback meets those requirements, as does the parking. However, the accessory side yard setback on the garage is 2.1 feet, where 6 feet is required. And the rear yard setback on the accessory structure is 0.9 feet, where 6 feet are required. Next slide, please. So just to give you an orientation, the property in the middle that is outlined in yellow is the property we're talking about. So you can see the house up along Federal Street that is consistent with the streetscape on Federal Street. And then you see tucked back in the corner on the bottom right-hand side of the accessory structure. To orient you, you've got Portman Street on the top there that runs, and that gives you an idea. And then High Street on next slide, please. So here's the site plan, and you have the proposed structure in the rear. Let's start with the accessory structure. So you see that kind of hashed lines. That's the existing structure in the garage in the rear. The proposal is to build it slightly larger, but pull it away from the property lines a little bit more. So there becomes 3 feet and 3 feet instead of the 2.1 and 0.9. So we do give some improvement on that rear and side setback. And then for the structure, the main structure, the house itself, you see on the on the left-hand side, you see the red outline of that front small addition. That's proposed to be removed. And then as you go towards the rear, there's another one-story addition in the back that's in red that's proposed to be removed. And then if you come back around the front, on the right-hand side, there's a one-story addition that is a little bit larger today that's proposed to be removed, but there will be a new addition in its place that Scott will talk about in a minute. And then in the back, you can see the peach again is the proposed addition to replace what's being removed in the back. And with that, I'm going to show you the house and photos that exist today. So here we have the front elevation of the house. Next slide, please. This is the left-hand one-story sun porch addition that we're going to talk about in a little bit. That we're going to propose to remove. Next slide, please. As you look at this, you can see, of course, it's covering vinyl, so that's all going to come off and be go back to the siding that should be there. And then you see the one-story addition in the rear that's proposed to be removed. That has the former accessibility ramp there. Next slide. There's the garage in the back that we propose to remove and then take away from the side line a little bit as well. Next slide, please. So, George proposes with Scott's drawings, which we'll go over in a minute, to restore the detail of the Victorian architecture that's basically been lost over time, to improve the distances between the non-conforming side yard of the house by about a half a foot on the left-hand side of the house. By removing that rear one-story addition, it's going to improve that side setback and improving the setbacks, as I mentioned before, on the garage. We'll make sure that as you'll see in the drawings, that the addition in the rear is subservient to the main structure and not really seen from Federal Street. And it will improve the overall condition of the house and appearance of the house. Next slide, please. So what are we proposing to remove? It in accordance with the DCOD requirements under the ordinance, the applicant engaged Fred Emanuel, who's a professional engineer of Devon Christian Professional Engineers. They're structural engineers, and we provided the report to you in our filing. He indicates that the framing size on the sun porch roof, that's on the left-hand side addition, is inadequate for sliding snow and is subject to collapse. Further, the weight of the porch is assumed to exceed soil-bearing capacity as well. The other addition analyzes the first floor bathroom, so that's the right-hand front one-story addition. On the south side of the structure, it has noticeable slopes caused by inadequate support. I'll show you some of those photos in a minute. At least one of the CMU support piers appears to be leaning, and a timber post with signs of significant rot touches the ground, where the building code, of course, requires at least 8 inches of clearance from the earth. Both additions would require significant time and resources to bring into code compliance when compared to the complete demolition. So if you go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So here you can see some of the photographs which we included in our filing. So you can see the porch framing that is inadequate. You can see that CMU block that's helping to hold up the framing and on the bathroom side. You can see the slope that exists along flooring in the other right-hand picture. I believe that's from the side, which I think was probably originally built as porch and then over the years got closed in, even though it was never structurally supported. Next slide. Again, we have the roof being inadequate size. That's the picture on the upper left-hand side. And again, you can see underneath the structure, there inadequate support and the rock is occurring on both of those, including the old steel. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott to go over the proposed renovations.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Mead. Good evening, Scott Brown, the architect project. We started out taking the same approach with this project as we do with, all of our renovation projects to older sort of historic homes here in Newburyport, and that is to try to keep as much of the existing as possible. One of our goals here is to sort of add a 2-story addition off the back of the house, primarily to add some additional square footage to the second floor, not necessarily the first floor. And one of the things that you might notice in the lower right-hand corner of our drawings is that the difference between the existing first floor square footage and the proposed first floor square footage is not that significant. But in the very beginning of this project, it became apparent to us that adding this addition to the back of the house and working with the existing 1-story addition at the back left-hand corner was going to be problematic. And given that that addition was built in the 60s, it's not necessarily in terrible shape, but it was built in the 60s, and given the fact that it's awfully close to the lot line back there, it was an easy decision to remove it. And that addition that's built in the 60s alone counts for 13% of all removal coverage. In the beginning, we did have every intention to save those 2 1-story porches on the front left corner and the front right corner of the house. The porch on the front left corner, it became apparent that we were having sort of a programmatic challenge And, you know, it's odd that it was added, to the house to begin with, because there's no apparent purpose to it. And, you know, so we had a real big issue with that. And then when we learned that, you know, this component of the house was not original, in fact, it's not seen on any of the early 20th century Sanborn maps. That combined with these structural issues that we encountered, it became, you know, apparent to us that we needed to remove it. And I think the project is better for it. And it also gives some relief to the abutters on the upside. And again, the one-story porch on the right front corner, again, we had every intention to keep this as well. But when we discovered those structural issues, it made all the sense in the world to, you know, remove that and replace it in kind. So what we're seeing in this drawing, you know, we have our existing elevations on the top, proposed elevations on the bottom. You'll notice in the lower left-hand corner in red, that's one of those porches that's being removed, the one that's not original to the house. One of the first things that you might notice is that we're changing the window pattern at the second floor. We think it's an improvement to the house. We also think from a stylistic standpoint, it's an appropriate change. There's some other features that we are adding, but in fact, we're actually returning to what's there. What used to be there, a few slides, you'll see, you know, existing photo from the house taken in the 60s. And so one of the things that we're doing here is that we're kind of recapturing some of the stuff that this used to have. One of those elements is sort of these decorative, you know, shingle patterns and the shingle swoop that's immediately above, you know, those first floor windows. The window pattern is being changed to 2/1, which is, you know, entirely appropriate for, you know, this Victorian style. Next slide, please. This is the right side elevation, as you would see it from the driveway, existing new garage in the back corner. Lower left-hand corner, this is one of those one-story porches that is being, you know, removed and rebuilt. Being rebuilt in a slightly smaller footprint, and that's really about us trying to sort of have the details, you know, terminate in a clean way. This will have a full foundation underneath it, but you'll note there, one of the things that we're doing is we're proposing to cover that foundation, you know, with the lattice. So really, really the intent is to really sort of make it look like it's, you know, an enclosed porch. And, you know, off to the right there, you'll see this sort of demarcation line between the existing and a two-story addition. You know, we've done our best to sort of keep the height of this down. We've pinched the side back from the existing, and I think in this elevation, it really looks like a natural extension of the house. And in the lower right-hand corner, you will notice this sort of pergola-like structure. So off the back of the house, we are proposing a covered area, you know, over a patio. Next slide, please. So this is a rear elevation of the house. You'll notice on the bottom of the porch, structure covering the patio. And off to the right there, indicated in red, you know, that's that one-story 1960s addition that we are removing. And this is a, you know, this is helpful because you can actually see, you know, that some of this new work that we're doing, we're pulling it we're pulling it away, you know, from the lot line, giving the abutters a little bit of relief there. Next slide, please. So coming full circle, this is the left side of the house, you know, and this side, we're trying to strike a balance between, you know, providing our neighbors a little bit of privacy, but at the same time, not trying to make the, you know, this elevation too stark. And in the lower right-hand corner, that was the location of that, you know, screen porch in the front left corner of the house that we're removing that is not original to the box. In terms of materials, we have a mixture of, you know, white cedar sidewall shingles. Those are our scallop shingles. We have fiber cement siding, which is the clapboard, and, windows are gonna be a clad wood, simulated divided light window with a mutton bar, which is slightly thicker, 7/8 of an inch, which is, consistent with, the Victorian style. Next slide, please. So this is our new garage, located in the back right-hand corner. We are pulling this away from the, right side and rear yard lot lines, giving it a little bit more relief than what's there now. This is entirely consistent with the dimensional requirements of accessory structures here in Newburyport, including the width, the depth of it, and the height. This is slightly under 15 feet tall. It does have two dormers on the left and right side. They're pinched back, from the front gable and rear gable, and also the walls below, also consistent with Newburyport's requirements for shed dormers. There will be a finished second floor space above this. It's really intended to be an art studio, and that will be accessed by a stair, which is located in the back left corner. Next slide, please. Our DCOD calculation sheet and all of the areas in pink are those areas that we are proposing to either modify or remove and or cover, with our new addition. Next slide, please. And finally, this is our really one of two photos that we found, which actually shows, what this house did originally look like. And I think this is from the 60s. And you can see that there's some elements here that we're trying to, kind of recapture, including this decorative shingle pattern. What we're putting back is a little different from this, but it somewhat, emulates what's there. And, the shingle swoop and the horizontal band of the sill, decorative patterns at the gable end, up high. Also, some elements that just sort of bring back to this house. And with that, hand it back to Attorney Mead. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And so, if you go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. So the conditions of the DCOD, the criteria of the DCOD special permit require that the board find that the areas of the structure that are to be demolished retains no substantial remaining market value or reasonable use, taking into account the cost of rehabilitation to meet the requirements of the building code as applies to. We've shown you through the structural engineer's letter and Scott's report that the poor condition of the sun porch and the bathroom addition prohibits the reasonable use of these portions of the structure and rehabilitation thereof. Importantly, 27.2% of the exterior wall demolition comes from the sun porch, bathroom addition, and rear addition. In fact, the rear addition is 13% of that 27%. Those portions of the structure do not retain any substantial market value or reasonable use considering the condition of therein. Without the removal of those failing additions, the removal on the structure would be far less than 25%. So indeed, I would also point out to you that the Historic Commission found that the removal of the rear addition or replacement of the proposed two-story addition does not impact the view of the residents from Federal Street or negatively impact the important architectural characteristics thereof. In fact, as Scott pointed out, the addition in the back is not even seen behind the original L to the house. They said, in fact, the removal of these intrusive porch-like structure to the northeast side is an improvement. In general, the proposed plans represent restoration and being based on historical documentary evidence comply with the Secretary's standards and guidelines. So for those reasons, we believe that we meet the main criteria of the DCOD special permit. Then, of course, as the board knows, there's the 10H7 special permit criteria, which I'll run through if you could go to the next slide. And the next thing. So 10H7 requires your general special permit criteria. So first, the use that we're doing here, the single family use, it's allowed in the ordinance, and of course, the single family use is allowed in the R2 zoning district. The requested use is essential or desirable to public convenience or welfare. By allowing the single family use by right in the R2 district, the city determines it's essential to the desirable the desirable to the welfare of the city. The requested use will not create any undue traffic congestion or impair pedestrian safety. Here, we're not changing the use at all, so there will be no impact on either. The requested use won't overload public water, drainage, or other public systems. Here again, the use is not changing, and also there will not be changes to any of those systems. Any special regulations for the use, and here there are no special regulations for the use. The sixth is that the use will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining districts. Here is a single-family district, in fact, and so the continued use will be the same as it is today and won't impair those districts or the surrounding neighborhood. Request use will not, by its addition to the neighborhood, cause an excess of that particular use. Again, it's currently a single-family house, and that's not going to change. Proposed use is in harmony and purpose with the intent of the ordinance. Again, the renovation of the unsafe portions of the structure promote health, safety, and convenience and general welfare, and helps conserve the values of the property, all consistent with the general purpose of the ordinance. And finally, that the proposed use will not be conducted in a manner so as to omit any dangerous, noxious, or injurious, or otherwise objectionable activities. And of course, the single-family use will not do that. Therefore, we believe that we meet the criteria of the DCOD special permit. So the other permit that we're required to have is the special permit for nonconformities under 92A. Here, the first criteria is that there are no new nonconformities, and in fact, there are not any new nonconformities. The second criteria is that it is not the proposed scale, massing, and volume, and location of the new additions cannot be considered substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing conditions. So here, the proposed additions offer a visually preferable appearance to the neighborhood than in the main structure, as well as the rehabbed and removed and rebuilt garage. The current structure is a combination of haphazardly designed additions where the proposal brings cohesion to the structure and more appropriate with its original Victorian architecture. It incorporates details that are appropriate for that architectural style. It uses high quality and appropriate materials, windows, repairs, repoints the foundation, and takes advantage of additional details that are important to the historic structure. Also, I would point out from a size point of view, which I'll go over those numbers in a minute, and the house currently is 1,949 square feet. There's no living space in the garage. So in total, we're adding 799 square feet, but of that, 438 square feet is over the garage. So in the house, there's only going to be 361 square feet added. So it still saves to a modest 2,310 square feet. If you go to the next slide, Caitlin, you can see that that's actually continues to be consistent with the neighborhood. So the existing is 1949, 54 to 56 Prospect Street. Across the street is 2,400 square feet, 2465 actually. The proposed new 59 Federal Street with both the garage and the house is 2,748 square feet. The house alone, as I said, would be 2,310 square feet. So this all retains the same size, massing, and scale as the rest of the neighborhood. I want to point out a couple of things, and if the board doesn't mind, I just want to hand something out to you. So George, as you all know, was vacation week last week, well, not for me, but for a lot of people. And so George had the opportunity at the end of the week and also today and yesterday to meet with some of the neighbors. So George agreed to do a couple of things, and I want to make sure that you include them as conditions, if you don't mind, just so everybody is clear that the agreements are there and will carry on. So first is that the space above the garage will be used only as an office or artist space and not as a dwelling unit. Of course, as you know, if it were to become an accessory dwelling unit, it would have to meet a bunch of other criteria. But importantly, in this instance, this is a pre-existing non-conforming lot, so it'd have to come back to you anyway. And the lot already has a special permit on it, so but we don't mind having the condition that I proposed here. The next is that there is a tree, to the south of the driveway in the back. You go to the site plan, Caitlin, I think maybe that might show.
Lisa, I'm sorry, do you have an, I've got two of the same sheet. Do you have an,
I was just seeing. if we're paying
I was
attention.
trying to figure out what I was
Why
missing.
is everybody else?
I'm like, why do I need that copy? It's fine.
Why is everybody else?
Just the
looking at it?
chair, like, they got pictures, I don't have
Right.
pictures. Thank you, sorry.
So you can see towards the back by the garage, there's a tree right in front of where the garage is. So, the agreement is that before pruning or modifying the tree to the south of the driveway, the applicant will consult services of certified arborist to ensure the tree is long-term health. Okay. The next is that the applicant will shape the driveway and pitch and add drainage necessary to not adversely affect the property to the south or the basement of the property to the south from water seepage created by the installation of a new driveway. So of course, there is a driveway there now, but it's going to be improved. The adversely affect is a building code requirement. And so George is going to be, obviously will comply with those requirements. So if you could add that as a condition. And then the applicant's automated garage door opener for the garage will be current model so that as to reduce potential adverse noise impacts on the neighbors. We're finding that as being a condition. And finally, I've given you a new plan. And I'm really starting to do that on the hearing, but you do have a plan where the applicant is going to remove the windows from the dormer on the south side of the garage. And so that's in that plan, and you can attach that plan to your decision if you don't mind. And with that, Mr. Chair, we request that you grant a special permit for DCOD as well as a special permit for non-conformities. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation and the additional conditions in detail. So we'll close that portion of the public hearing. Go to public comment. Anyone in the room wish to speak or be heard on this application? Seeing no hands. Looks like we have one hand up in our virtual audience. Looks like Matt W. Matt, if you can hear us, go ahead and unmute your mic. We'll do the same. And you just give us your name and address. And,
Good evening. This is Matt Withington. I live at 1R Horton Street, directly abutting 59 Federal Street. I just wanted to start by thanking the applicants and their team for working with us to address our concerns from the beginning. Our main issue with the project, specifically the garage, was our family's privacy. And after discussions and modifications, just want to note our appreciation that they removed the dormer windows on the right side of the garage and replaced them with skylights. And with the changes in place, I'm comfortable supporting the project as long as the construction remains consistent with the revised plans that Lisa shared, and specifically the skylights remain in place of the windows to preserve our privacy. And I would also just respectfully ask that any future modifications to size, placement, or any type of these openings be subject to board review. But again, just wanted to note my appreciation and the collaboration of everyone's efforts to find a solution that works for all of our parties. And thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in connection with the application? Seeing no hands in the audience and seeing no further hands online, we'll close public comment and go to questions from the board. Start with Mr. Swanton.
Do I have this one? I'm going to defer to the next person.
All right, Mr. Swanton's going to pass. Mr. Lott.
I had only one question. On the slide, slide 8, which is the pictures of the structure that currently exists. There's a little window that's like a stained glass window or like a Victorian looking window on the second floor. And that's shown on the existing conditions that comes out in the new building. And I was wondering what if that was something that was considered remaining or just came out because of interior concerns or You know, if that's something that, you know, how that was developed, because if you look at some of the pictures and if you walk up and down the street, you see those kind of windows show up in a lot of, not a lot, but in the newer street, you see a bunch of those kind of windows.
Yeah, it was taken out due to interior concerns. But there is another window on the other side.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's
That's
at
what
the
actually,
elevation, which is a little nicer than this one that we are, you know, are keeping. So we're losing one, but at the same time, keeping one on the other side.
anyway, that could get used in some other location or something like that.
Possible, we might be able to find it.
Actually, I had no questions as usual, some presentation clearly understood.
I just noticed in the historic picture, it's fun to see the historic picture, you have. Could you put up for a second, I happened to walk by there today and it was peeling off the side and you can see more of this historic stuff is under there. I did notice in the drawings, that these are 2/2 windows, historically. And you're proposing to use 2/1. What the comment?
Quite honestly, we missed that detail in this photo, but we've seen examples of both, you know, within this particular style. So we think that this proposal is successful, consistent.
Okay. All right, thank you. Like Bud said, you've covered a lot of stuff here, and I'm pretty clear. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Ginton?
You heard him for,
Oh,
thinking.
Larry, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. I just want to see if you have any questions.
Yeah, well, the only thing that struck me is when you look at that northwest elevation drawing, the new frontage of this home is completely different than as it exists now. And now I'm looking at you start looking at the windows being moved around, the door being moved around, and then I start looking back towards the historic picture that they provided to us, which is great. I'm just wondering, I say this all the time. I'm not the taste police. I think it's beautiful what you're doing. I'm just curious, historically, are you bringing it back historically by moving all the windows and doors around, or are we kind of creating a new house?
I'm gonna let Scott address that, but the Historic Commission actually was very pleased with the restoration of the house, and that's represented in their letter. Just a collaborative Historic Commission meeting that we had, so I would say that was their comment when they reviewed it, and that's what they said in their letter.
Yeah,
Very good.
you know, we're just really trying to sort of strike a balance here between trying to do what's appropriate for the house, stylistically appropriate, and also renovate it and kind of make it work. One of the things that we did do here early on, we spent a lot of time walking up and down Horton Street. And Horton Street is perpendicular to Federal. Next street, closest street to this, you know, towards High Street. And, you know, on Horton Street has a lot of examples of, you know, Victorian homes. Some of them overly ornate, some of them more pedestrian. You know, two different examples of Queen, this is sort of like Queen Anne-esque, simplified version of the Queen Anne. So like Horton Street had a lot of different examples of houses of this style. We spent a lot of time looking at them on that street, and you know, that really gave us comfort, you know, in terms of what we were doing here, the stylistic view.
Thank you.
Okay, anything, Mr. Ginton, anything further?
No, sir.
Um, I don't have any questions that haven't already been asked either, so if there's no other questions, we'll close that portion and go into our deliberations. And again, we're deliberating two sets of criteria, the special permit for the demolition of greater than 25% within the DCOD. And then the special permit for nonconformities for the extension of the setback of primary and accessory structure. We could probably deliberate these together. Who would like to jump in?
I'll start.
Very good.
Well, taking the one we usually do first, the two-prong criteria, are there any new non-conformities? No, there. A little troubled by the coverage becoming intensified, but that's not a new non-conformity. And then it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the currently there. Well, I think it's a significant improvement to the neighborhood than what's currently there. It's, house is a little sad, and it's taking off some of the things you're taking off. Bringing back the look you're bringing back, I think it's a significant improvement. Architecturally, but not really. Well, with our two-prong attack, we're really not looking at architecture, but I think it's an improvement. There's not any serious massing. As you point out, the addition in square footage in the house is rather modest at 300 and something square feet. And it's not a lot. You're actually improving some of the side lot setbacks with what you're doing, only marginally, but they're so close to the side lot that even a small improvement is nice. And the garage, although it grew a little bit, it came in off the sides. The other criteria around DCOD, as you point out, the Historic Commission gave a very enthusiastic input on that, and they're a very critical advisor to us on the DCOD. So their enthusiastic findings are important and significant. You did hurdle the 25% demolition, which is why you have to do the DOCD, but as you point out, much of what you demolished was stuff that didn't have lot. It was more recent, had very little historic fabric, and the Historical Commission agreed with that. The DCOD also has a list of things that you nicely summarized on page 24. We can just put up page 24 for a second. I don't really want to go through the nine of them, but because I think it's so well done here. You know, it's allowed use, it's desirable and essential, it's not a traffic situation or utilities or special regulations. Continuation of use is in harmony, and it's not noxious. I'll incorporate that into my comment. Anyway, for all those reasons, I can support both of these special permits that are required.
Very good. Mr. Luck.
Yeah, and I think I'll agree with what Mr. Swanton said. I think with respect to the DCOD special permit, I think based on the materials that were submitted, we have substantial evidence that that portion of the structure to be demolished does not have reasonable use in its current condition. So I think we can clear it.
I agree. My biggest concern on the special permit for non-conformities was the lot coverage increasing so dramatically. 4%. But I must say it's offset so much by the improvements to the building and saving will be a gem. That weighing those, the juxtaposition of the two, I can support the
Great. Yeah, I too, for the same reasons, can support the application of both requests. I feel that the applicants more than met the criteria. It's certainly an improvement and a thoughtful restoration, to say the least. Anything further? Mr. Ginton. Sorry.
It's a beautifully planned renovation. I think it's gonna look lovely when it's done, and I support the application.
Great. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out there.
No worries.
All right, we can go ahead unless there's anything further. We'll close deliberations and we'll take these one at a time in the order in our agenda. So we'll do the DCOD application first. Do we have a motion and a second?
Motion to approve the application for DCOD. Special permit for 59 Federal Street.
Motion's made by Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Shannon. Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Ginton?
Yes.
And I vote yes, it's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. Motion carries. On the second matter, the special permit for nonconformities, do we have a motion? And also, were there any conditions?
Yeah, we have a lot of conditions, so I'll make the motion. Motion to approve the application for special permit for nonconformities for 59 Federal Street, subject to this type list of conditions.
Will incorporate by
Yeah, I'd like to add the condition that you make a attempt to use that other window if, economically possible.
Very good. Motion's made by Mr. Swanton and seconded by Mr. Delisle on the special permit for nonconformities. Calling the roll, Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Ginton.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yes, that's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it, and that motion carries as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Have a good evening. Okay, moving to our third application this evening. This is the application of Lee and Carolyn Carter, care of Lisa Mead, attorney Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC. This is the application for property address 262 High Street. A special permit for nonconformities to construct a guest suite above the existing garage that extends upwards, non-conforming rear and side yard upwards into the non-conforming rear and side yard setbacks. Attorney Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. For the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street, in the report on behalf of Lee and Carolyn Carter, and Lee is with me here this evening. My colleague Ben Roberts as well. The architect on the project is Rachel Harris, and the contractor is Ben Becker. Neither Rachel or Ben were able to be with us this evening, so you get to have me play architect, which is always a fun thing. So this is in fact a request for special permit for nonconformities. This house, if you go to the next slide, please, is 262 High Street. And if I tell you where it is, you're gonna know exactly. So right across from Toppins Lane, the second one over from Tink Street. Beautiful, original 1795 house ish. And this, what we're doing is talking about the garage that's attached to it 80 feet off the street, all the way to the back. So Lee and Carolyn proposed to renovate their home. It's in the R2 district, DCOD district. DCOD is not triggered. They're gonna do some renovations to the existing home that don't trigger anything, and to reconstruct the garage at the rear of the property by adding a second story. So they're not changing the footprint for the first floor at all, they're just adding the second story. It's currently all one structure. Next slide, please. The existing home, just for reference sake, depending on what you look at, was constructed around 1795, according to the Form B cover page, around 1696 or 1750, according to the Form B information page, and 1795, according to the district data sheets, or 1774, according to the assessor's records. The house is, the garage is not. So if you go to the next slide. So just to orient yourself again, here in the middle of the photo, my maps is the property. You see the house in the middle, and you see the garage to the top right-hand corner in the rear. You can see Toppins Lane at the bottom left-hand side of the picture, Tink Street on the right, and then Broad Street on. Next slide, please. And here's the site plan. So the property has is pre-existing non-conforming. and it's pre-existing non-conforming for front yard setback of the original structure, the southerly upside setback of the garage, which is the right-hand side of the garage, and the rear setback of the garage. But because it's all connected, it's all a primary structure, and those the existing non-conformities. Of course, the front yard setback is supposed to be 25 feet, where there's 8.1. The south side of the garage is at 2.7, where 10 feet is required, and the rear yard is at 0.4, where 25 feet is required. The property is also pre-existing non-conforming for lot coverage of 31.4%, where 25% is allowed. But as I said before, there's not going to be any change in the footprint. So next slide, please. So here's a view of the house from the front, and you can see the garage setback on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. And here's our left side of the house. Left side of my street. Next slide, please. And the right side, again, you can see the garage from the back, and you can kind of picture, which we're going to show you in a minute, the elevations where it's going to go up, second story, mimicking that, by the way, the gambrel roof that we have here. Next slide, please. And again, looking down the driveway to the rear, and the next slide, please. And here's the side elevation of the house, the southerly side, or the easterly side. Next slide, please. And there's a left elevation. Next slide. So, and I just went over the dimensions that are non-conforming. Next slide, please. So as I noted, we're going to have the, put the addition above the garage and include the minor renovations to the existing structure. So you can go to the first elevation of the drawings. So here is the front elevation. The top is the existing elevation and the bottom is proposed. So we'll start with the garage. So you can see the addition over the garage with the dormer in the middle. The dormer windows pick up on the windows that are 6/6 on the rest of the house. And you can also see just the first little bump out from the original structure. You see one of the little changes. In the existing elevation, there's a door at the top, and that becomes a window at the bottom. So that's part of our DCOD calculations. But those are the kind of minor changes that are made on the original structure. Next slide, please. So here's the right elevation, and you can see at the top the existing, and then you can see that they had a regular gable end roof on the garage. It doesn't really tie in at all. It looks like the garage. I think that we nailed the garage in about 1980. Is that what the 1988? I think was the assessment. So that kind of looks like it was constructed in 1988 without any consideration of the architectural style of the house. So if you look at the proposed elevation, you can see that Rachel picks up the gambrel form. As a result of that, I might point out here from the rear setback, which is the closest, you have that first floor wall, but then the gambrel pulls away. So you don't have a straight wall that goes up in that close area in the back. It pulls away from the rear wall. Next slide, please. And here's the left side elevation. Again, you can see the second story on the garage, and there is a minor change to the elevation on this side for the DCOD. At the windows, you see a couple minor changes on the windows against the house. Of course, that doesn't trigger the DCOD. Next slide, please. And then here's the rear elevation. And so you can see the second story being added on to the garage, and it's got a pair of windows in the back. Next slide, please. And just for informational sake, you can see here's the section or the floor plans that show the second floor. So it's not habitable space. It's not intended to be an ADU for all those who want to know. There's no kitchen in here. And there's no second means of egress that would qualify for it anyway. And Jennifer's been very clear about that. She actually wondered if we wanted to make it an ADU, and Lee and Carolyn were very clear that that's not the intent, and therefore there's no kitchen, and it doesn't qualify as essentially a dwelling unit. So it is merely a guest suite, and it is attached, of course, to the main structure, through the stairwell and the garage. Next, please. And then rendering, so just to give an idea of perspective, since flat drawings are difficult to understand how far back. The garage doesn't take away at all from the front of the house. It is set back 80 feet from High Street. And you can see that in this rendering and the next rendering as well. And so that's the other perspective. So next slide, please. So with that, under the criteria for section 9, the first is that there will be no new nonconformity, and here there is no new nonconformity being created at all. The second is whether the proposed change will be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. Here, the proposed footprint doesn't change at all, and we don't increase any nonconformity. Rather, we're extending the side and rear setback in an upward fashion. We're not making it any worse. We're extending it in an upward fashion on the side and rear yard. I think it's important to note, as I said a little bit ago, while there's increase in height because of the design of the gambrel roof on the rear yard line, it actually slopes away from the lot line as it goes up into the second floor. The proposed massing addition of the garage brings unity to the massing of the structure and improves the view from High Street, quite frankly, as opposed to the 1988 style of the addition. The proposed shape, volume, massing of the structure fit in with the other residences along High Street as well as along Tang and Broad Street. And as I noted, the addition is 80 feet away from High Street. The applicant has taken great care to design the addition to be historically and architecturally complementary to the existing structure, as well as being functional. So in the context, the proposal removes, as I said before, a small number, 8.17% of the exterior walls. Most of that, by the way, are the ends of the gable roof, because since it's attached to the original house, you have to count the removal of those gable ends in your DCOD calculations. So the 8.17%, most of that is the removal of those gable ends. And so if I could go to the next slide, please, just to show some context. So right here, you can see the side, the fence with 260 High Street on the right-hand side, just to give you some context of where we are in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And there's 260 High Street, you're looking from the driveway over. You can see that the house for 260 High Street is up closer to the street, and there's a small accessory structure in the back, which is closer to where the garage is. Next slide, please. And then you can see 44 Broad in the rear of this, where the little arrow is in the back corner. Next slide, please. And that's 49 Ting in that back corner, just to give an idea. Next slide. And that's 2 Toppins Lane across the street, another gambrel. Next slide. And of course, there's the high school. And 249 High, again, that is down from where we are at 262. Next slide. And here's 260, this is the corner of High. Next slide. And 264 on the opposite side. Next slide. So we believe that the board can find that it will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure, and that we have not created any new non-conformities. I will also say that we have, and actually I just want to point out that I've been reversing, it's Broad Street on the right and Ting Street on the left. I just realized that. That we've got letters of support that we submitted from 264 Ting Street, 264 High Street, 51 Ting Street, and 49 Ting Street. And the applicant has also met the neighbors. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, very good. We'll close the presentation portion of the public hearing. Go to public comment. Anyone in the room wish to speak? Seeing no hands. Anyone online wish to speak? Also, no hands. We'll close public comment. Questions from the board? You want to just jump in? No wrong answers.
I'll start. So that's really only the second, those gambrel ends are gonna get removed and then they're gonna build up on the existing
Yes.
structures.
That is,
Oh, wow.
yes,
Good thing it's from 1988.
right, I mean, I think that's part of it. Right?
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't really have any other.
Which is the butter right behind it with their 44th Street. Did they, assume they got a notice?
Right, and my clients reached out to them, had a conversation with them, and to our knowledge, they have no issue and
Yeah, I can see their house is kind of away from that corner anyway.
right. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, no, I have no question.
Anything?
The only question I had was, are they gonna leave the first floor of the garage there? It was answered.
Larry, any questions, for you?
No question, sir.
All right, I'm not. Okay, we'll close questions and go right into deliberations. And again, we're deliberating the, special permit criteria. So, we'll just jump right into that.
I'll start. I mean, two-pronged test, there are no new non-conformities. They're only putting an existing footprint going up. No new non-conformities. Is it more substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood? It's way back from the street. That perspective drawing was helpful, and just going down High Street and peeking back there is pretty helpful. It's way back. So I don't think this had a giant impact. You have letters of support from the neighbors, and no complaints from any neighbors. So I think it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the current non-conforming structure. So I can support this application.
Anything further?
I would just say that, I agree with Mr. Swanton on this one. I think this looks like a nice plan and a good way to reuse or adaptively use that space, so I can support this.
Agreed.
I agree. I actually don't think it's more detrimental. I think it's improving. I like the way the gambrel roof line is picking up the main house.
Right.
I think it actually enhances the overall property. So I can support it.
Mr. Hinton?
I support the application.
I agree. I support it as well. I think for all the reasons already stated. Unless there's anything further, I'll close deliberations. Do we have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for special permit for non-conformities for 262 High Street.
Thank you. I'll second that.
Motion's made by Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Delisle on the special permit for nonconformities on 262 High Street. Calling the roll, Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Ginton.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you
Good luck.
very much.
Okay, to our fourth and final application this evening. Thank you for your patience through the evening. This is the application Kevin Neville. Is it, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Neville, thank you. Kevin Neville of 8 Brown Avenue. This is an application for a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary approvals and permissions and permits to demolish an existing single-story structure to the foundation and reconstruct a new 2-story single-family structure on a similar footprint. An upward extension of a non-conforming front yard setback and the addition of a farmer's porch, which intensifies the non-conformity. Mr. Neville.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin Neville. I'm with Cobalt Development, and I'm the contractor responsible for the construction in Brown Ave. The aerial shot you see here, our parcel is highlighted in black. And just to give you, Duffy Drive, the subdivision created a few years ago, is to the south of this image, and Ferry Road is just to the north. This neighborhood was built out in the 1960s. It's primarily made up of ranch-style homes that have received additions, with space or garages over the years as you drive through. It's within the R2 zoning district, and this lot actually has enough square footage and frontage to meet those zoning requirements. We're here tonight for a special permit for nonconformities due to the front yard, primarily due to the front yard setback, which is under the 25 feet, 25-foot requirement. Next slide. So this aerial shot here shows the proposed construction of the exterior of the home. The primary area we're discussing tonight is up front of the house. You see the long, narrow tan van. That's a 5-foot farmer's porch with a livable space above. In addition to that, the existing single-family house is receiving a second-story addition. And then to the left side of the house is a garage with livable space above. We are planning there are currently 2 driveways access the property, one on the left and one on the right. We are planning to remove those and reseed and do planting beds in this place, and then we'll create a new driveway in front of the space. Next slide, please. This is the existing conditions plan. I've highlighted in green there the setback requirements. And so the existing house currently sits at 19.6 feet from the front lot line. Next slide, please. And then this here is our site plan, which highlights the new items in tan and the new extension with the 5-foot farmer's porch with the livable square feet above is at 18.6 feet. Next slide, please. The zoning matrix just to show that we do adhere to the lot size, frontage, lot coverage. Really, the only thing that we don't adhere to is the front yard setback for this particular issue. Next slide, please. And I did want to include just an elevation. This is proposed elevation of the house. I did include a picture of the existing conditions. There's also an elevation of the existing conditions further down that if there's questions, we can certainly reference back to. But our intention with this project is to try to blend this house into the existing neighborhood, being smaller side branches, although some of them do have second floors on them. So really what we're trying to achieve here is adding that farmer's porch up the front and only increasing the height of the structure by 10 feet from what's there now. And we believe that the farmer's porch really gives it a lower curb appeal and kind of plays the eye to make it appear like a home that is not quite sitting quite as high as if we did not have that farmer's porch and we had to go vertical to the second floor above the existing structure. Next slide, please. And then this elevation here shows a good view on the left side of the house. That's the existing house you see there. With that's starting the farmer's porch, I'll say, and then coming out 5 feet to the left. So you can see the farmer's porch extends up 5 feet, and then it is livable square feet above that as well. Next slide, please. Don't have much to talk about with the rear elevation right now. Next slide. These next 2 slides are the existing condition plans. If we have any questions related to those, and then we can go to the last slide. So just back to the aerial shot of our construction, you know, we're trying to minimize our impact in the neighborhood, whether it's at the completion of the project and during construction. So if we are not successful in receiving a special permit from farmer's porch, the intention I guess I should have is that we're salvaging the existing foundation of the structure, which is in good shape. So we'd like to still try to salvage that along with some of the framing for the rear house. which was an addition built prior to the initial early sixties house. But so we're trying to minimize the impact through the aesthetics of the house and also through the construction. If we're not successful with the permit, the plan is that we would end up demolishing the entire structure, setting it back within the setback requirements. And we would adhere to the remaining two zoning requirements. So, at this time, I'll open up for questions and.
Good. We'll close this portion of the public hearing. I see no one in the audience, I'm guessing no hands. And unless anyone's testing their cloaking device. I don't see any hands online either, so we'll close public comment. And we'll just go to questions. Anyone have any questions?
I'll start. I mean, looking at the lot, garage is actually under, the garage under. Does the topography actually support that? I mean, I know the house is up on a little bit of a berm.
Yeah.
Parking lot is kind of below it.
Yeah.
Is that 8 feet?
It does support it. It ended up being a smaller than 8 foot door, probably a 7 foot garage door, which is not uncommon.
Yeah.
It does support it on the left side of the house with the way the road slopes.
Yeah.
And it would, the way we designed it is it would be a slight, berm at the beginning of the driveway, which would facilitate street drainage to continue flowing down the street. And then it would have a slight gradual slope down into the garage. So
Oh, okay.
we would end up doing a French drain in front of the garage into a dry well.
The reason I was asking, I didn't know if you were gonna elevate the house to make up for that. You're gonna actually raise the old house, use the foundation,
We'd like to use the foundation, yes.
and then put a new house on top. But you'll start at the same invert of the concrete.
Sure, we may add, currently there's typical 2 plates, framing, so we may add 4 or 5 plates on there just to grab a couple extra
But it's
inches.
inches. Okay. And the new driveway would actually then scoot over to line up with the garage?
Correct, yeah, there's a two-car driveway to the left side.
Right.
We're probably, about half of that will be removed and seated, the other half is basically within our new driveway.
Okay, and there's no curb there, right? There's no curb cuts.
There are no curbs, yeah.
I think that's it. No other questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. So if you go to the plot, there it is. So the crosshatched area, not the farmer's port, but the crosshatched area, that's the existing foundation, basically.
Correct.
So now, can we look at a side elevation? I want to understand this farmer's porch in front of the porch division. I'm sorry, in front of the house foundation. So I guess my question is, the existing house foundation, is this thing that stops here?
That's correct.
So you are going closer to the street by not just the farmer's porch, but this whole second porch.
Correct.
Why? I thought you're trying to go up on the foundation.
We are, the house, the depth of the house, it limits, I guess, the footprint on the second floor with what we're able to achieve with the hallway and things up there.
If you're gonna hang off the foundation on the front, why not, back? You have a, you're not, asking for relief, basically.
There is the section up the back, you can see the slope kind of coming toward us.
Yeah.
That's an existing addition. Basically gonna reframe it to the exact specs.
They're gonna keep that foundation as well. Is that a basement or is that a crawl space?
That's across space.
You have a full basement in the rest.
Correct. So that limited us from being able to push it back, without modifying, the roof line back there. And
Confused me as you kept talking about the farmer's porch, but to me, it's a lot more than a farmer's porch. It's a whole second floor that's coming closer to the street. Right?
yeah, I mentioned it with livable space, I guess, above, I guess I could clarify.
Yeah, I get it. On the first floor, it's farmer's porch. Second floor, it's it's more of the upstairs. I understand you're trying to get more width there, so I understand. Why you're just trying to make sure. Understood what.
Sure.
Okay. That's really my one question.
So, I'm sorry.
Actually, I do have one more, which is, in the assessor's record, this building is 1,281 square feet of livable square footage. What is the new building that you're done?
The new square footage will be just over 3,300. And the reason, I guess, it's inflated when you have those ground under garages because we have two sets of livable square feet. So really what it breaks down to is the square footage above the garage between the first floor and second floor, it's about 1,200 square feet.
But the 33 total includes the living area.
Correct.
Living area in the garage and in the two-story house.
Correct.
So you're going from like 1,300 to 33. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So for that garage column that you were speaking of, that's gonna be its own new foundation, correct? That's being independent from the existing foundation.
Yes, we'll pin it to the existing
Right,
foundation,
but it's not there. It's something that will be for new. And as proposed with the further 5-foot, sort of movement out into the front yard setback, that would leave what remaining of the front yard setback? Is that 14.6 or 14?
Yes.
14 feet 6 inches,
Yes.
and it's 25 is the
25 is the biggest. Yeah, so that's the existing there, 19.6, and then the 5 feet, it's 19.6.
Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Ginta, how about any questions from you?
So the speaker was a little bit garbled for me, and I think through the previous questions, I've got the idea here. But so he has a setback in the front yard that's an issue, and that issue is arising because he's trying to use the existing foundation. And that farmer's porch has a second floor that is pushing out towards the street. This is so you need relief because you don't want to pull out this foundation and push this house backwards.
Essentially, yes. Our position one would be to existing foundation. It really comes down to, minimizing the site impact. We have large excavation on our hands to do that. The foundation is in good shape. There's no water, signs of water in that basement. The concrete slabs in good shape in the basement, so we'd like to try to utilize it. It's already, the existing house is within the setback. I know we're asking to approach. But yes, to answer your question.
All set?
All right, thank you.
I don't have any further. So we can close questions and go into deliberations. Again, we are deliberating the special permit criteria for a special permit for non-conformities. Who would like to lead on?
I guess I'll start, the first prong was no new non-conformity, we haven't created a new one. We are making an existing non-conforming works. Right, going from 20 feet down to 14.6. But that's not a new non-conforming. It's just making an existing non-conforming. Right. And then as far as more detrimental to the neighborhood, this is a addition, I think. From the drawings, it's bigger going back than it is from the street. So I'm not as concerned with the massing. It is a big house compared to some of the smaller houses in that neighborhood. It's a big house, but there are some big houses in that neighborhood. There are some houses that have been modified big. So I'm not concerned with the amassing. I don't think it's more detrimental. And like one of the previous applications, it's an existing non-conforming that's getting worse. But I find it acceptable. I think it's a tasteful addition. So with that said, I would support the application.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'll go. I am, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Chagnon in some respects and disagree in other respects. I think it's a very nice design, and I think it's gonna look really sharp when it's built. I am really troubled by the sort of encroachment into the front yard setback, and it's a big encroachment for me. And I think, sort of actually consistent with what Mr. Chagnon said, I think that it is a big structure. And if you're gonna build it that much further closer to the street in the front yard setback, I think that would make it feel even larger. So I think this is probably a project that, given the size of the lot, would be better served to be set back further. So that's sort of my thoughts on this one.
Anyone else?
I'll speak also. I'm conflicted. I do think it's a nice home, an improvement to the neighborhood, but I do not like the fact that it's encroaching the street.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the concern with the encroaching on the street, both the farmer's porch and the livable square footage directly above it? I guess would it change your opinion if we did remove the livable square footage above? It simply did a farmer's porch up it.
Mr. Ginta, did you hear that question?
I'm having a very hard time hearing him, so if you could repeat that for me.
Do you want to try to speak into that microphone?
How's this? Can you hear me a little more? Any better?
Say that again.
Yeah.
Or you know what? Actually, this is a microphone and a speaker. If you want to come closer to the that might.
Talk to that.
How's this? Is this clear?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
Yes, very clear.
So my question was, is the concern related to the farmer's porch and the livable square footage above? Or I guess if we came back with a revised plan that removed the livable square footage encroaching any further, but included the farmer's porch on that plan, I guess would that change your opinion?
For me, you appear to have the space to build the home that you want, and stay within the setback on the front. It's just the fact that you're trying to use the existing foundation that has got you kind of in a bind.
Okay. So I mean, I think you heard sort of the comments as we're going to press pause for a moment during deliberation. We always try to, slow down the moment so that nothing happens without, applicant input. So as it stands right now, there are 5 voting members. You need 4, of course, in order to have a successful application. Rather than we can move forward with the vote, it sounds like there's at least 2 members, perhaps more, 3, who are having some trouble with this as proposed. I don't want you to find yourself in a vote that could forestall your ability to come back before us without a significant redesign and could possibly delay moving forward. So do you want taking the input of the board members, do you want to try to make some modifications, come back before us? Do you want us to proceed with the vote on what's proposed? Do you want to make any any changes, and keeping in mind, I know this is a lot. It's the more, adaptive and changed the plan becomes sort of on the spot, the less likely, my sense is, that members of the board might feel comfortable with that without seeing it, redrawn and redesigned. Minor things we often will, we can work with, but as we get into significant changes that change dimensions and setbacks, the actual calculus becomes problematic to just sort of go unspirited. So I don't want to deprive you of the opportunity to take a pause and perhaps come back before us if that's what you're inclined to do, but I want to give you that, impression as the chair. My colleagues that I stand evenly footed with on this, there's at least 3 that are having some trouble with this.
Could I offer one thing with that? Sure. I think my colleagues are concerned about the fact that you're pushing into the setback further. If you were to leave the foundation where it is today, you would make it no worse. Am I correct? We would be comfortable with that. Even though the existing foundation is already in the setback. Sure.
Because that's an existing condition.
It's an existing condition. I think they'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So use that maybe as if you're gonna come back, you're gonna ask for continuance and come back. Use that as your guiding line.
Could I ask, I understand Mr. Ginta's comment about he would prefer not to see the farmer's porch. Is that kind of your feeling as well?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Don't go any further into the setback than the foundation is today.
Then I'll ask for a continuance.
Okay. When would we be able to?
March 11th, next meeting.
Okay.
Too soon
How soon do you folks need to provide?
or? Like a week before.
So on the applicant's request, the board is being asked to consider the applicant's request for a continuance to March 11th for purposes of submitting updated plans with respect to the design and its particular porch. Do we have a motion to approve the continuance to March 11th in a second?
Make that motion.
All right, Mr. Shannon made the motion, Mr. Swanton gestured second. So, following the roll, Mr. Swanton. Yes. Mr. Lyle.
Yeah.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Ginta.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, as well on the continuance. And I hope that's helpful. We just don't want to see you sort of jerk yourself,
No, it's very,
sort of out in the cold, so to speak. But the motion carries, the ayes have it, motion carries, and the matter's going to be back before us on the 11th. Okay. We'll see you then, and thank you very much. Just be in touch with the planning office on our revised plans. Okay. Okay, that concludes our public hearings this evening. We can close that portion of our meeting, and we can go into the approval of the minutes from February 11th. Do we have any changes, modifications? If not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion's made by Mr. Chairman.
with just my signal.
Yeah. Has gestured in the affirmative.
We're going to the mine.
I believe we have an affirmative smirk by Mr. Shannon. Minutes were correct. So, motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Aye.
I didn't catch the word smart second.
Oh, there was a smirk, motion by Mr. Shannon and a second grimace by Mr. Swan.
Oh, a grimace.
It was a grimace. Seemed to be yeah. It was very judged.
Smirks and grimaces apparently are.
There you go.
It was, all right, we have no other updates. Do we have a motion of any, any sensory version to adjourn?
We have a grunt to adjourn.
We have a second grouse. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah,
for
thanks.
sticking
All
around.
right. Good night, everybody.
Good hustle tonight, Larry.
Otherwise, I'd be way off.